Hey gang, Rowan here. Welcome on back to the Cade and another episode of WTF Wednesday, where we take a dive into a game that on paper, by all accounts, could have been a really great game, but it had some things in it that kept it from getting there. And this week we're going to go back to 1988 and we're going to play a game that I will say here and now was one of my favorite Nintendo games of all time. It was the game that in a lot of ways put Rare on the map as a video game provider for the NES at a time where the little gray juggernaut was really needing content to separate itself from all of its rivals. We're going to play RC Pro-Am. Now, if you're like me and you grew up in the 80s and you had a Nintendo Entertainment System, and I would expect quite a few of you had, when this game came out, it was one that was probably either on your want list for a birthday or Christmas, or you found a way to get enough money, either delivering papers back when paperboys were a thing, and you could go around your neighborhood and mow lawns when that was still a thing, and get your hands on a copy of it. Now, that begs the question, why would a game like this make it to WTF Wednesday? Well, as we shall show you over the next half an hour, this game had enough things going for it that its faults belied what could have made the game greater. Now, how this game works is real simple. You're driving this little red RC car, which in this current configuration is a pickup truck. The type of car you drive changes as you advance through the game, and there are 32 tracks, which are basically in different configurations of the same base tracks that you'll run with different cars on it. As you go through each one, you'll get more additions for things like turbo, tires, engines for top speed, acceleration, handling, and you will have different obstacles. Like right at the moment, the thing you got to worry about is oil and water on different parts of the track. Now, I will go so far as to boast that when I was a kid and I was really at my peak as a Nintendo Entertainment System player, I ruled on this game. I was scoring gold trophy after gold trophy after gold trophy for as much as I could get, and then I ran into why this game qualifies as a WTF Wednesday. One is that because you can't ever finish the game. Yes, there are 32 tracks, but you actually cannot beat the game. The game never ends. And one other thing that you find out is that you will hit a point where the difficulty curve goes so far afield of what you start with and what you know, that even before you get anywhere near the final track, which I've never gotten to in almost 40 years of playing this game, I've never gotten close to the final track on it. The difficulty shoots up so big that you pretty much get so frustrated that you check out before you ever get a chance to really get the most out of playing the game. Which, when you look at it on paper and see how it's designed, I mean, the graphics are really easy to track. And I'm not going to win this one. I'm going to be out. If you finish out of the top 3, if you don't make it to the podium, it's game over. And you only get 3 continues. But you pick up where you left off. And the mechanics in this game are not that hard, because you have your acceleration button, which is your A, and then your B button allows you to fire weaponry. But you have to be careful in how you disperse said weaponry, because if you are not careful about it, that yellow truck that just came down there at the bottom of the screen, if you use your weapons too often, that truck finds an extra gear that makes it absolutely blitz everybody else, and you cannot catch it. I don't care how fast you are, how sharp your reflexes are, you simply cannot catch that yellow truck if you use too many weapons. And there is no set amount of weapons you can use from one track to another that differentiates what'll work and what don't, or what will set it off and what won't. Now, the trick to this game, like most racing games, is learning to be smooth. It's making sure you don't hit the outside barriers, which will slow you down, and obviously avoiding any obstacles that will slow you down or cause you to crash. So mainly things like oil slicks, stuff like that. And then if you can make it through the chicanes and hit these little zip arrows, that makes it nice. And then those white bars that I just picked up is basically like a roll cage. And it makes me temporarily invincible. And then as you see at the bottom, I'm spelling out the word Nintendo on the central console. Once I do that, that's basically your level up. And I'll move on to the next stage of vehicles, which is like a Jeep. Then the stars you get allow you to get more ammunition for your weapons. But again, you have to be careful in how much of that you use, and I'm out again. So it's real easy to go from being in first place to being in last place, even if you have your car decked out like this. And it can come down to things like one corner. Or even in some cases, just not hitting an item at the right time. And the AI for the computer always tends to know how to avoid most of the targets, or most of the obstacles. Alright, needed that. And I came in second, and by a whisker. Now you'll see all the letters go away, and I get bonus points for each one I get. And now I start over with a brand new vehicle. Now I get the Jeep. And the Jeep is a little bit quicker, and I find that this one is a little bit easier to control. And I don't know why, because there's no real discernible difference in how each one handles. And you try not to bounce around so much. And I come in third. Now this game, in terms of reviews and reception, got 4.5 out of 5 by Allgame when it came out in 1988. The Computer and Video Games magazine rated it at 90%. And it was the first Rare game that I know of that sold in excess of 5 million copies. Like, this was a super popular game at a time where RC racing was really at an all-time peak in actual RC cars. As I just completely yacked myself. That was not smart. Alright, I've caught up to the pack. Alright, took that one out. Here they come again. Ah, come on. Ooh, and I got second. I was thinking I'd maybe hold on for third. Now, as you collect trophies, it doesn't really have any bearing on the game. Ah! There we go, got the win on that one. Now, Computer Gaming World, in their review, called it a compelling, innovative approach to car racing games. And I have to admit, at the time, the only other sort of racing game that got any major appeal was a game called Rad Racer, which isn't a terrible game, but in the grand scheme of things, was a far cry from the sort of racing games you get today. There we go. This level is a bear just because of the number of oil slicks. And because you were looking at it from isometric perspective as opposed to sitting there in a first-person point of view, that made the game more interesting as well. Because you were able to get just a better understanding of how the game was functioning, and you had a better understanding of how to navigate the course. Oh, except I lost. But again, it's so easy to be able to go in and think you have the lead and then lose it just a split second later if you don't run everything perfectly. And that's where the WTF portion of this comes in, because you figure if they could just tweak the mechanics a little bit, make the steering just a little bit sharper, make the track not as rigid, stuff like that. Don't put as many obstacles on the track to make it that much harder. And maybe tone down the AI just a touch. Because now we got to start all over again. Now, they did do a sequel of this game called Super RC Pro 2, and this game was ported onto the Sega Genesis after it was shown to be as successful as it was on the Nintendo. And Allgame ranked it among the best NES games of all time. And I'm inclined to stick with that. But part of the problem, again, is that it could be so much more, and it could be so much better if they put just a little bit more into it. In fact, when for Rare's 25th anniversary in 2010, Vintage Games ranked RC Pro-Am 22nd on the list of the top 25 games the company ever produced. Now, one thing I will give it is that it does reward you the more you put into it. The sharper you get with understanding how the car grips, how to navigate your way around the courses, stuff like that, your practice does genuinely pay off. But in 2016, VintageGamer.com praised it for still being enjoyable and challenging nearly 3 decades after it was created. I got a second. And then when Retro Gamer did their review of it, they saw it as a precursor to Micro Machines, which was a game that was created by Codemasters before they started doing all the F1 games they're now synonymous with. But I remember as a kid having friends and neighbors who were similar age to me, and they were massively into RC car racing with actual cars. And you never quite realized as a kid how expensive that hobby is. Like, you could get a run-of-the-mill RC car for, if you were lucky, like $50. But like a really good RC car that would do a considerable amount of speed and would do the stuff that you really wanted it to do would cost you a couple $100 easy. I come in third again. When GamePro did their rankings in 1990 of the best sports games of all time, RC Pro-Am came in 10th. Oh, and I've used too many missiles already because there goes the yellow car and I'm never going to catch him. Look at how fast he is going. You realize he is going to purely lap the field. And that's the risk you run by using too many weapons in the game. So it has a built-in handicap for you. And yeah, that yellow truck had already gone around and did its third full lap by the time we started. And that was so frustrating as a kid to not be able to understand why it was that one truck could take off like that and you could never catch it. But one thing that they never put into the mechanics of this game is a brake. Because if you do it right, you never have to brake. This was the first game that I know of that taught you things like drifting. Am I going to come home and get first? I am going to come home and get first. Wow, I didn't think I was going to get that one. Game Informer put this game as 84th on its top 100 list. EGM ranked it as 52nd. But I stand by my observation on it in that this game still could have been better if Rare had just put a little bit more into it. And I come in second. IGN listed it as 13th as their best, on their list of best NES games of all time. And actually inspired two sequels, Super RC Pro-Am and RC Pro-Am 2. I've never played either one of those. I've only played this version of it. And I think part of me was always reluctant to want to play it, or play the sequels, because I was always worried that they were never going to be as good as this one. And the game was reissued via the Nintendo Classic service in February of last year. So if you actually want to play it and you have access to it, you can play this original version of the game. All right, come home second in that one. Now, Rare did attempt to do a 3D version of this game for the Nintendo 64 called Pro-Am 64, but they ended up changing direction on it, and that's what became Diddy Kong Racing 64. Oh, I hate this level because it's got oil everywhere. You have 5 laps. And they always put the oil in the worst possible spot. Getting the roll cages is absolutely critical to making it through this level. Oh, come on. Not what I wanted. Give me that. Alright, 2 laps to go. And no more roll cage. I got one more. Okay. Oh, get out. Oh, come on. Well, that's game over, and that's 25 minutes. And that, everybody, is RC Pro-Am for the Nintendo for the Nintendo Entertainment System, I should say, from 1988. And that is WTF Wednesday. Now, I know there are going to be people, like I said, who will come back at me and say, Ronan, what the hell are you talking about? This is my favorite Nintendo game. And any criticism of it is blasphemy. I stand by what I said. This game, as good as it was, back now nearly 40 years ago, could have been so much more if they had tweaked it just a little bit. It could have been one of the all-time great video games, period, bar none. Forget Nintendo games. And that's the frustrating thing, is when you know you have a really great concept and you have a really great game and it's got really good mechanics, but it undoes itself by making things either too complicated or not having enough of the things that keep you engaged long term. That you can't finish the game is one thing. That's not uncommon for most games back in the 80s. Because again, that was a trade-off of the arcade days. But by the time you got to the consoles in the mid to late 80s, you were starting to see games that could be completed. And to think that you could get all the way up to here where you're running the actual RC cars, you had to be so good and be able to have the mechanics down so much that really you had to have, I don't know how many bowls of cereal you needed to have on a given Saturday morning to generate the amount of reflexes in your fingertips to navigate your way around these sorts of tracks with all these obstacles that you're seeing and never hit one. And that the computer can find its way around it and seldom, if ever, hit them, shows you the difficulty spike that is built into the game. And in a lot of ways, that reminds me of modern racing games. And I'm a big modern racing game guy. I love the Gran Turismo series. At some point, we're going to do some stuff with Gran Turismo on this channel. But part of the problem with Gran Turismo is that once you hit GT4, yes, you go out and you pay $50 for the game. But it's actually a $500 game. Because you need the game, sure, but you also need at least a $300 to $400 wheel to play the game worth a damn. RC Pro-Am to me feels like a game that if back in the 80s, if you had the ability to drive this with a functional wheel like I do with Gran Turismo Sport and Gran Turismo 7, this game would be an absolute riot. That you're having to use a controller and that the reaction times and that you don't have the really super fine controls that you're seeing here on the demo screen. I mean, for the average gamer, that becomes so frustrating you don't want to play anymore. And you don't get the full enjoyment of it. And I think that's where RC Pro-Am sells itself short. That's where I think it could have been that much better. And that's why it is a WTF Wednesday entry. So, if you've been enjoying the content on the channel, leave it down below. If you've been, give me your experience with RC Pro-Am. Again, good, bad, or indifferent. You know, did you ever beat it? Did you ever get to the point where you were actually able to drive the RC cars? I'd love to know. Leave it in the comments below what your experience with this game has been. And if you have any other games that you think would make a good WTF Wednesday, leave that in the comments below as well. Also, be sure to tune in to Sports Saturday and Suckerpunch Sunday coming up this weekend. We're at the AFC Championship game for Season 2 of Sega Sports NFL 2K2 on the Sega Dreamcast, as we're trying to replicate the New England Patriots dynasty of the early 2000s without the existence of Tom Brady. We did a lot better than I thought in our first playoff game, but now we're going to have our work cut out for us if we want to get back to the Super Bowl for the second straight year. And then Sucker Punch Sunday, we will be playing a classic fighting or fighting platform-based game from the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th generation. We do have our next playthrough picked out, but like I told you previously, we're going to give that a couple of weeks, probably once we get rolling into maybe early summer, simply because we wanted to bring back our one-day playthroughs, which we hope you tuned in for on Monday as we took a crack at Bubble Bobble from this time in the 80s, and also do more WTF Wednesday content. Be sure to follow us on social media through Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky. Ronan's Retrocade helps spread the word about us as we continue to build this channel, make it bigger and better. My name is Ronan. It's been great to spend this WTF Wednesday with you. Be safe, be well, happy gaming, and we'll talk to you Saturday as we get cracking on Sega Sports NFL 2K2 in Sports Saturday. Bye.